So in part 2 we made our first application window and we put a label and a rectangle and things in it, and that was from my Qt1. We started off with our main C++ file and our main QML file. We used QMake project to make the project file, and then we used QMake and make to get our finished binary. So let's just copy the same main.cpp and main QML files from my Qt1, and we'll put them in a folder called imaginatively my Qt2. And we can actually just reuse the same main C++. So that's just going to load the main QML, that's fine. And for our main QML, this is where we're going to make a few changes. So we can close the main C++ file down, we won't make any changes there, but we're going to remove everything apart from just the standard application window first of all. Well, let's change the color this time to purple. So we're going to run through the same again. We're going to open up a terminal and we're going to use QMake project. That creates our myqt2.pro file, and we add qt plus equals QML once again, just same as before. And then that's everything we need from our myqt2.pro file. So now we run qmake, giving us our make file, and now we run make, and that gives us our binary. So myqt2, if we run that, you'll see it's just an application window again, this time in purple, and of course it's resizable. But you can see if you try and resize it to something really too small, then it lets you do that. So let's give it a minimum width and a minimum height. These are just properties of a window. So we're going for a minimum width of 300 and a minimum height of 200. It's still quite small, but at least it doesn't allow the window to disappear. So now here's our resizable window, and that's as small as it can get, and so it can still be useful whatever size you're able to resize it to. So let's start again with a rectangle, and again we make a rectangle with two curly brackets, and then we put the rectangle properties in there. Again, we're going to have the width is the same as the application window width, and the height is going to be the parent height, but divided by 2, so it's half the size, half the height of the application window. Now we do want to anchor this to the top of the parent. Again, that's the application window there, so the top of the parent and the top of the rectangle are going to be anchored together. Now this time we're going to have a transparent color. Because the application window's already got the color we want, we don't need this rectangle to be colored, and we're going to copy that, and then we'll make another rectangle, and this will be the bottom section, just as we had before. So everything's fine apart from the anchor. You want to anchor the bottom of this bottom section to the bottom of the application window. And if we save that and then just run it with /myqt2, you can see we've got our window there, but the rectangles are transparent, so you can't really see them. So what happens if we forget to put a color in? Well, let's save it and find out. So this is why you want to give any rectangles a color of some sort, even if that color is transparent. So now we have a top section and a bottom section, and then within the top rectangle we want to put something, and we're going to put a label again, and so the label is contained within its own curly brackets, and then we put the properties of the label. We want the text, and we're going to have in the original message, and put that in quotation marks. We'll give it a color, and we're using the QML inbuilt colors again, so just orange in quotation marks there. And the anchors center in, and we're going to center it in the parent, so that will always stay within that top rectangle. And in the bottom rectangle, we're going to this time use a button. And a button technically is really just another rectangle, but with a mouse area and a couple of other properties. But if we make use of this just now, we get the text that's on the button, and then we want to anchor it somewhere, and let's put it in the center of this bottom rectangle as well. So you can click on the closing brackets, the closing curly brackets of each section, and then you can be sure that everything's contained where it should be, and all within the application window. So we save and do ./myQt2 again. And here we have our resizable window. And it's got our label and our button. And of course, if you press the button, well, it doesn't do anything yet. So if we want to have some changes being made by pressing the button, then we need to add an ID to what we're going to change. So this allows us to reference the label, for example. So we're going to call it the message, and then we're going to use the onClicked property of the button. So onClicked, and we use a colon, and then we give it a set of curly brackets, and everything within those curly brackets it will carry out when the button is pressed. Now these are actually JavaScript expressions, so the message.text equals, and then we change the text. So we're referencing the message, and we're reference specifically the text of the message, and change it to something else. So now when we have our window and we press the button, there we go, we've made a slightly interactive button. So can we do anything else with it? Well, if we add some more ID properties, how about if we add an ID to the application window? So let's give a name to the application window, and we'll call it main window. So now when we click the button, we can say the main window, and we'll do .color. So we'll change the color of the main window, and it will now equal something else. We're going to make it go to blue. So let's save that, and again run myQt2, and you can see there it's carried out all the things I've asked it to do on onClicked. Now that will only do everything once, so we want to have a property value now, a boolean property for a toggle switch. So we can just create a new property here, and we say that it's a boolean property, and we give it a name. We're calling it the toggle, and a boolean property can be either true or false. So we're going to start it off as false, and then when the button's clicked, we will evaluate this if expression. So if the toggle is false, so it starts off as false, then we'll want the message text to change and the color of the window to change. So we want that contained within those brackets again as well. So everything in QML is going to generally be contained within its own set of curly brackets to keep it separate. And the else clause as well. So if the toggle's false, then we make those changes. Otherwise, we want the message text to go back to the original and the main window color to go back to blue. So we can actually just copy these but make the changes that we want here. So it said the original message to begin with, so this will give the impression of it going back to how it was. and the main window color will go back to purple. Now it would be more useful to have the toggle switch change to true once you click it, and then if it was already true, in the else clause, just to tidy that up a little bit with a tab, and so if it was true, then we want to make the toggle to be false in the else clause. Now you can put semicolons here and it will still work, and because this is running sort of actually JavaScript expressions, you would think that it would require that. However, it's actually recommended that you don't have semicolons there, but it'll work either way. But the general consensus is not to use semicolons in your JavaScript expressions that are contained in QML. And putting them on a separate line is just fine. So you can see here with the closing brackets, it does start to get a little bit busier. So you can use some double / comments there just to keep everything easy to read at a glance. It's not necessary. You can just click on the closing brackets and you should get them highlighted where it begins, but you might find it useful all the same, particularly when your expressions start to get more complicated. So if we save this, and then that will be a proper nice interactive application window that we've made with a button which connects to other properties and makes changes to them. And in part 4 we'll extend this further into something maybe just a little bit more useful.